Hey everyone, so glad you're joining us today, Midweek Live, middle of your day. I'm Kim.
I'm Chris.
Yeah, it's so glad that you're here, Chris. If people didn't know, we've kind of been saying it a little bit throughout the month of September, but it is National Recovery Month.
Yep.
And I love how Will said this on Sunday, just because the month is ending does not mean that recovery is ending or that your ability to step in for the first time is ending. None of that is going away. Right. But we really are putting some extra effort in to allow people to hear stories. I also want to be sure I said this when Peggy shared her testimony. This is not something we have everybody do.
No, not at all.
Anonymity and confidentiality are so very important to celebrate recovery.
Yep.
And so I just want to make sure that we say that right out of the gate.
Yes.
I did not say, Chris, you are doing this, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. No, we keep things confidential all the time. In
absolutely.
Recovery, so it is a voluntary.
Yeah.
thing.
You say, hey, I am willing to do this.
Absolutely.
And you're part of the team. Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm an encourager coach.
There
I
you
encourage
go.
people. So,
okay.
yeah, it's good, but yeah.
Nice. The team is basically the leadership team there at Celebrate Recovery. And so when did you share your first testimony with Celebrate Recovery?
November of 2018.
Okay. And that was fairly new. You were fairly new to Celebrate.
About 9 months into Celebrate Recovery at that time. Yes.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And you've shared it again since then?
Yeah, I've shared it again at our Celebrate Recovery. And about 2 months ago, I shared it at Northeast Assembly of God.
That's so cool.
And again, Celebrate Recovery is like every night. And so we try to get people need to hear testimonies in the work that God has done in their life. So we are willing to go. And we've had other churches in on our Celebrate Recovery.
Well, you were just telling me right before COVID hit, you were actually out of state.
Yeah, I was our training facilities in Norman, Oklahoma. And I was there for 2 weeks, and I went to Celebrate Recovery on a Tuesday night there, and I met the ministry leader and talked to him, and it was a testimony night there, and he came up and introduced himself and asked me if I've ever given my testimony, and I was like, well, I'm getting ready to.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, he goes, next time you're here, we'll do it. Can you do it here? And I said, yeah, we could arrange that. And I was supposed to do it last August, a year ago, and COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I haven't been in there.
Yeah.
So.
But that's just really cool to imagine that, that is the beauty of testimonies, right? It's just human beings, relating with other human beings.
Absolutely. And the Celebrate Recovery testimony is what God has done with your addictions or your hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and the work he's done in my life. And so why would I want to keep that a secret?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you've experienced life beyond the struggle, right? It's something you actually want to talk about with other people and share, because there are so many people that are living in that right now. Right. And you get an opportunity to share hope and encouragement.
Absolutely.
And hopefully somebody takes that first step into a new life of recovery.
That's right, because it does. It just takes that first step.
Wow.
And let God do the work.
Yeah.
You just got to be there to let him do it.
Yeah. So. A willing heart is always a very important part. Yeah. And you learn that, how to be willing. I know I've stepped into many recovery groups, and at first you're a little guarded, right? You're kind of taking the temperature of the room, and it takes some time, right? To just keep attending, keep showing up, right? Yeah. Keep listening, keep sharing what you can.
Let it work.
Allow the process to happen, but just keep going.
That's right.
The importance of it is your consistency.
That's right.
It's funny because as addicts, or even we're so consistent with all the bad stuff, right?
Right. I can make time for this.
We have no problem having the issues and sticking with them, and we keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. But
that's insanity.
Exactly. But then in recovery, it's like we have to keep reminding it, keep coming, just keep coming, and wait for the miracle. So let's just kind of step in. You were born here?
Born and raised. About 2 miles from here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So here in Fresno. What was childhood like for you?
Childhood for me was chaotic. It was not. Well, I didn't know the difference at the time, but I grew up in a household where there was a lot of drinking.
Yeah.
I had 2 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 3, and during my high school years, I had 2 brothers that were drug dealers. So drugs and alcohol were part of growing up, but I didn't know there was something wrong with alcohol.
Well, I was going to say, if that's not been your reality, I hear that, somebody else hears that and goes, whoa, that's got to be really crummy, The actuality is, no other reality
No,
but
you
that.
don't. And I mean, my parents would go out on the weekends and they would drink till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and that was normal.
Yeah.
And they would end up getting into an argument, of course,
Right.
and that was another part of my childhood, was a lot of anger and violence and everything else.
Yeah.
So it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But again, as you're growing up, it's just normal.
Yeah, exactly. You would have no. Well, I was even saying, even for my own guys, it's like, when they complain about us, getting on them about certain things, it's like, man, we're just being good, healthy parents here. Like, you just have you just have no other form of an example of a family beside your own, what you're living in your own.
Right, and the people that grew up in my neighborhood or grew up with my parents, their friends and their kids, we were all doing the same thing.
Right.
So you think,
so for everybody,
they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So did you have any kind of God example, church influence, any of that growing up?
Well, when my mom left my dad when I was 14 years old, and we started Hope Lutheran, I was baptized as a young adult.
Okay.
And God was calling me then.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to listen.
Yeah.
And I went to youth groups, and I went to trips with them and minister or like
missionary
stuff like that.
thing.
And it was just, it was fun, but honestly, I was going because of the girls. So it was.
I have a feeling it tends to be a lot of first, you know.
So there wasn't a lot of God in my life growing up. In my family life, none. So.
Right. And so you really, because you're not, did even being exposed to church or a different way of life, did you make any connection with other people's lives, and how different were you noticing anything different between?
No, not
still
at all.
Not. Yeah. When did you meet your now wife? Which I think is, by the way, I love that your names are like literally like a letter or two away from the same name.
And we've heard that our whole lives. In high school, I met Christy my senior year. She was a sophomore, and we were cruising up and down Blackstone.
Oh yeah.
And I met her there, and she got pregnant on her 16th birthday. I was 18, and we got married a few months later, and I joined the Navy after that, and I met her way back then. We'll be married, I better get this right, 33 years in February, so.
we'll edit out if you got it right. I'm just kidding.
This is live, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so did things change at all when you met Christy? Did you feel like there was things about your life that you wanted to kind of iron out or straighten out, or any of those things, or?
But I was a young man, joined the Navy. The things that changed. I got away from my family, my influence, and I thought, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be different to my wife than my dad was. I'm going to be different to my kids when they're born, and so I had the perfect plan laid out. Well, the perfect plans don't always happen.
Yeah.
So.
Was it more on the level of like, I'm going to be there for my kids because my parents really weren't there for me? It was more on the like fundamental, I'm going to love my family, I'm going to do things different. Did it include things like, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to go out partying? Was it like that distinct, or was it just, I'm not going to give my kids the same childhood I had? Right.
No, I was going to give my kids a better childhood. My wife and I, you're in the Navy, of course, you're going to go have drinks here and there with your buddies and stuff, but we didn't really do anything when we were first married. We didn't drink a lot. We didn't do drugs at all or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just her and I on the East Coast, young people, no family around, nobody. It was just her and I and our baby, who's now 32. But
So. We lived the same life. What part of the East Coast were you guys on? Do you remember what state you were in?
We lived in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
Then we lived in Staten Island, New York, and then we went back to Woodbridge, Virginia, which is like right outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay. Yeah. There is an interesting, I can relate with that. There's nobody else around. It's just you and me.
Yep.
And I think there's a really great bond that happens with your family during that time. There's like I said, there's nobody else. There's no other distractions. There's no other like high school friends or longtime family. It's just the two of you kind of trying to figure out life and make wise decisions as best you can because you're young at that same time.
And my youngest son, he was born in Washington, D.C. at Bethesda Naval Hospital way back then. So we were... I think at that time I was a little over 20.
Yeah.
And we had 2 kids.
Yeah, family of 4.
Yeah, and there was a lot of peace, but there was a lot of questioning. And no chaos at that time, really.
Right.
So.
Maybe the normal frustrations of being young and married and all of that. But there was no drugs.
No.
There was no alcohol involved.
No.
When did that change?
Okay, so we moved. I got out of the Navy in '92, and we moved over to the Central Coast. My wife had gotten into a car accident in '94, and we had a roommate, and she had some methamphetamines. And so I was working graveyards for the Postal Service, and I woke up, and they're like, hey, try this. And working nights and having 2 small kids and having a wife that was in a car accident, it was like, hey, this is great.
This is an escape.
I could stay awake. I could get things done. I could go to work, and I wasn't hurting anybody.
Right.
So that's when it started.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And that's it, your reasons.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, that does keep you up. That does help you to,
right.
have the energy for the kids because she's maybe not as, you've lost a partner in this process. And so how long did that last for?
Okay, so we started over in Salinas, and then we did it a little bit over there. Then my brother would come over, and we would do it with him, and we would do it on weekends. Then we moved back to Fresno. And we did it for quite a while. We had some friends that we'd party with on the weekends, and I'd always be the one to go get it, and I'd get my own on the side. So we'd party, and then I'd have stuff for the week of work, and it was a bad cycle because I would do it to stay awake, to go to work. I'd get off, and I'd be wide awake, and do it again to go to work again.
Right.
So and then I just stopped going to work. So
yeah, I was going to say, at what point did you just stop?
But
actually,
I was in control, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, you do feel like you do feel like as if you are in control. There is a skewed vision of how things
absolutely. Are. And no matter how much she and I were fighting and how dysfunctional. I mean, I went to jail during that time for domestic violence. That was in '97. And went into the house and just made a complete fool of myself. That was before cell phones. They tried to call 911. I ripped the phone out of the wall and ended up in jail. And she bailed me out. And it went on until I got fired from the post office. And I thought it would be a good idea to take my unemployment check and go get jacked up and go to Reno and gambled, of course.
Yeah.
And gambled it away, then came home, and I called her from Turlock, and I told her, she goes, I'm done. She goes, I sold all your stuff. I had to pay the bills, and I had my God moment there where I prayed to God and that I can't do this alone.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a big believer in God, but God told me that day, he goes, go, relax. And so I went to sleep for like 4 or 5 hours, and I got up and came home, and I'd never done drugs again. Ever since then. Yeah, she took me back in and I rebuilt my life from drugs. So it was total God, because I never had been tempted again, and that was after like 3 years of doing.
I was going to say, did it take what do you think was actually the motivating factor there? Did you have those moments of like, wait, I'm looking back on this whole situation now, and everything I said I didn't want to have happen in my own home is now happening. Did you have that moment?
I did. I had a few times. I mean, where anger was a huge part of my life, and I thought, being a man, I could be angry all the time, and no one would say anything about it, and I would look there and say, you just turned into your dad.
Yeah.
You're not drinking, but you're doing drugs.
So you did have these realizations.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it didn't seem to be enough to stop the behavior.
No, it took God to do that.
And do you feel like it was the situation, Christy, saying like, nope, I've grabbed stuff, I need to pay for it, we're done? Or was it just like, I'm done? Like
It was God telling me, I've got you.
Yeah.
And you're done. And that is the honest God's truth. In my testimony that I give, at that moment, right, and again, I put God in my life, and I put God in control of my life for that time.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So things went good for a while.
For a while, yes.
Were you in recovery at that time?
No.
It
I was supposed to go to recovery. Well, let me rephrase that. I did go to recovery when I got my job back at the Postal Service after 2 years of being terminated. They required me to go to Narcotics Anonymous, an employee assistance program, and all this stuff. So I had to go to Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And I did. I did it as a requirement, but it was after the fact. I'd been clean for like 2 years before I started doing it, but it was still good to go to. And there was a couple things, I mean, I had to I got arrested again for not doing the stuff the court-ordered stuff that I was supposed to
Got
do.
it.
We were clean and sober. We were sitting at our house listening to music, and the cops came to the door and took me away.
Really?
Because I had bench warrants.
Right.
And so I went to a domestic violence class for a year, every week for a year. And, you know, there's a lot of counselors in there that makes you realize what you're doing, why you're mad, why no one makes you mad, you make yourself mad, all that stuff. And, you know, one of the guys told me, he goes, you had a really dysfunctional childhood while you're growing up. And he goes, so when things are going smooth in your life, you like to throw a wrench in it because that's dysfunction is comfort to you. And that was like an aha moment right there.
Yeah, that discomfort, sorry, when things are good, that is uncomfortable, subliminally uncomfortable for you. It's not what you're used to.
Right.
So you're trying to get it back to chaos, even though chaos is in fact chaos, but you're more comfortable in it.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But
I mean, it's true, but
true.
it is a very true statement. Yeah. It's sad that it's a true statement, but it does go to show you how much like your childhood, your home, your family around you and stuff influence you for decades. You hadn't lived with your parents or lived in a situation like that in decades, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 2 years or 2 decades.
Yeah. So a good 20 years. So things are going good. You got your job back. Yeah. You got your wife back. You know, got the family. It sounds like a country song backwards, right? You got everything back. But things changed again.
Yeah, I started taking control of my life again and put God to the side. And or put God in his box in the corner. You know, he's there if I need him. But and so I started gambling. Gambling's something everyone does, so it's accepted. And I would hit the casino all the time. I was, doing it a lot. Yeah. But I was winning, but I was spending the winnings and not saving them for losses.
Right.
So, especially when I started sports betting. Gambling was more of an addiction to me than drugs. And I found something that was acceptable, something I could do that no one cared about until I started opening lines of credit, all to myself.
I was going to say, Christy, know any about this?
Well, not at first.
Right.
So I would open lines of credit. I would pay off my bookies. Then I'd be like, okay, how am I going to pay this off now? I mean, I had a motorcycle at a time, and I went over to a loan place and took a loan against it for like 43% interest to pay off.
My goodness.
Yeah, it was bad.
Wow.
I mean, it got to a point where I was sitting there at night and I couldn't sleep. Well, how am I going to get out of this debt?
Yeah.
How am I going to pay this? And I'm talking, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And she knew about it, but we were in a place in our relationship where we weren't even communicating.
Yeah.
We would just pretend we were happy sometimes, but for the most part, it was like, you do your thing, I'm going to do my own thing. And then she would do the bills because I couldn't be financially trusted.
Right.
And she would come up and say, hey, where's this $2,000? Where's this $4,000? I say, I will never do it again. Well, one of the things I learned growing up is if you lie, you get off the hook right then and there. And I did that for a long time. So, I mean, even when we started coming to North Point, I would come in here on Sundays and I would hear Shane or Steve or anyone up there giving a message, but I wasn't listening to it because I was so worried about how am I going to get out of this debt. And
I would go as far as to say I don't think that's that abnormal on a Sunday that we would have people attending for a long period of time, and it's just a facade, really. Yeah. It's to look the part. It's to check it off the list, right? To look that you're healthy,
Sunday.
right? Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And there's is it correct in saying, is that even for you? A part of you can be like, well, I'm not that bad of a person because I'm going to church.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm working on it. It'll click with me sooner or later.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to hear what God is saying through our teachers here. And I wasn't hearing it at that time. I wasn't having nothing of it.
I've heard it said that when you quit one addiction, you change to a different one.
Right.
And so this one ended up being gambling. For many people, it could be something like eating too much or, smoking. Yeah.
I mean, a drug addict could start drinking,
and,
I'm not doing this, but I'm drinking.
But it's fine. It's just social or it's just this or it's just that.
That's the bad thing about gambling is that, hey, I was part of a poker league and we would play once a month. I mean, a high-stakes poker league.
Right.
We had a tournament. It didn't bother me. I mean, but when I quit gambling, when in April of 2018, when I quit gambling, I had to. A couple of the guys are still my friends, and they understand what I went through and why I had to do what I had to do. But a lot of those guys, the other 8 or 9 guys, I don't even associate with
Right.
anymore. And that's too bad, because
Yeah.
I'd like them to see what God has done in case they go down that same path of gambling. Because I know of a couple of them that are in the same situation, if not worse now than I was back then.
What made you get help for the gambling?
I had nowhere else to turn. And I was just like, this is it. I need to figure something out. So I went to Gamblers Anonymous, and there was a lot of broken people there. And like I said, my wife and I, we were not in a place. So she started coming to Celebrate Recovery to deal with me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to figure out how to fix him.
Yeah.
And she came a couple weeks, and then she was like, will you come? And I was like, you know, I drove by the banner a million times, and I always thought it was for people that were celebrating their recovery. They're already cured of their hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And
that is actually really helpful to know. Interesting.
And, you know, you're celebrating recovery, right?
Yeah.
But I tell you, when I came here, she brought me here. She introduced me to Pastor Mike, and man, it was just mind-blowing. It was like, wow, this is really cool. These people are really cool. And went to CR 101 and watched the video, and it was just, it changed my life that night when I came here. It just changed everything. So
was it hard for you to make I mean, like, I feel like there are certain things, and gambling, I think, falls underneath this. It's not the typical addiction. Right. And it's socially acceptable.
Yes.
So was it hard for you to identify that this was an addiction, or do you think it was pretty easy at that point?
Oh no, when I mean, being an addictive person, I knew I was hooked.
Yeah.
I mean, because you do drugs and you get that high, you're always chasing that high. When I hit a $9,000 jackpot at Table Mountain, I was always up there chasing that high again, because that rush. So coming here, I learned about addictions. Coming to Celebrate Recovery, I learned about addiction and basically what led to my addiction, and it had nothing to do with substance abuse.
Right.
Remember, that was just a short blip.
Right.
But it had to do with hurts of my life that I've since dealt with. And man, I could sleep, and I could be peaceful. And even though something's socially acceptable doesn't mean it can't harm you. I mean, alcohol is socially acceptable to an extent.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, so, you can go to a bar right now and there's people drinking and it's no biggie.
Right. You go to Table Mountain or Chauncey or whatever, there's a ton of people up there gambling and they're spending their last paycheck.
Yeah.
So
and you don't always take that into consideration, because you could be somebody, we were talking about this, you know, having an addictive personality, the bummer about it is that you don't discover it until it kind of discovers you, right?
Right.
It's one of those things. I gave you the example that I was given when we were doing recovery when we were a lot younger, that I've told my sons growing up, and it's like, you know, a bee allergy. You and I look exactly the same, but one of us might have a bee allergy, and you just don't know till you get stung by a bee.
That's right.
The difference is that with things like drugs or alcohol or even gambling, things like that, and I think it's really important that we say the importance of identifying the many things you can be addicted to.
Right.
For ladies, I feel like shopping can be one of those things. Yes. You get that and online shopping.
It's easy.
Because not only is it easy, but you get a little bit of a dopamine by picking something out, but then you get another one when it arrives,
right.
and then another one when you wear it. You know, like it keeps kind of hitting those highs, as we would say. And so I think identifying that exact thing, this chemical something that happens in us when we, by our own means, by our own decisions, do something then that gives us that feeling.
Right.
And so I think really there are so many socially acceptable addictions that we need to learn to identify many of them, and really asking the right questions with people that we care about, with our family, with our kids.
And when you see it in somebody, I mean, one of the things they teach us in Celebrate Recovery is that we're not here to fix you. We'll help you, but we're not here to fix you. And so when you see it in somebody and you want so bad to say, look, stop, you can't do that. You've got to let them come along their own path. And it could be anything. It could.
Yes.
And one of the things that you learn, I mean, it was just like Ronnie's message on Sunday when he was talking about sexuality.
Yes.
I went to him after the service and I was like, man, this can hit any of the addictions that are in there. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I was like, it's crazy because you could fall into that trap, and people need to realize they could fall into that trap. And, you don't realize what drives addiction until I didn't realize what drove addiction until I went to Celebrate Recovery. And I learned about hurts. And I learned about stuff that I grew up with that can impact the way you decide things.
Yeah.
And it drove a lot of my addictions.
Yeah.
Growing up hurt, in a
Yes.
violent household, and
Yeah.
everything else drove
Yes.
a lot of that. It was comfort.
Yes.
So.
I went to a counselor years ago, and I loved that he gave this example. He said, that throughout your life, there are moments where like a tuning fork almost gets set in your life, and an experience or whatever. If you've ever been around a tuning fork, I'm not sure if you guys know what that is. Anyway, it's Yamaha image. Anyway, but if you have it and you hit something, it rings out. And so there's certain times in life where you have these moments of effect.
Right.
And they happen when you're really young and as you grow through life. But then as an adult, you have these moments that trigger. If I set a tuning fork next to these other tuning forks, they'll all start to ring.
Right.
They'll all respond.
Right.
All the way back to those things that I experienced when I was 6, 7, 10, 12,
Right.
15, So when we think about how that affects us, right? An emotion, a difficulty that we happen to be walking in right now,
Right.
it actually rings true for a hurt all the way back when we were young.
And you might not know that.
Right.
You might not know what's driving what's going on
Absolutely.
right now. So,
yeah.
that's true.
A feeling of, maybe a parent left your home, and there's a pain that you're dealing with there. Or maybe someone hurt you, right? There's a pain that you're dealing with there. Right. And so really what you're doing now is trying to not feel that. Right? Not feel that emotion anymore.
Well, there's a 4-step in our step studies.
Yeah.
I went through one, I led one. So I did 2-step studies. And the 4 steps is basically an inventory process.
Yeah.
And you basically put down the people
Yeah.
in your life, what happened, what effect it had on you, and what part you played. Because we all play a part. I mean, there's certain things that we don't play a part in. Abuse,
Yes,
stuff like
absolutely.
that you don't play a part in. But there's some things like if I inventoried my wife, for example, there's parts that I played into my inventory for the hurts that she caused me. So that was, believe it or not, that's a lot of times when people like quit.
Yes.
But it's my favorite step.
Yeah. Well, it should be. I mean, it should be the thing where if we're really wanting recovery, really wanting to dig in, and we recognize that this is the thing, right? We would never tell a doctor, like, I'm not going to do that blood work or that x-ray or that whatever, to discover what the issue is. We would never say that. For the most part, we're going to be like, okay, I don't really want to do this, but I'll do it because I want answers. Right. And that's really what that step is all about, is discovering.
It is. And another step that we do after that is the daily inventory process. And what I liked about that is if I caused you hurt, I would be able, hopefully, to go home, journal it, and come back to you the next day and say, hey, I want to make an amends to you for what I did. Or if you hurt me, I could offer you forgiveness too. And daily inventory helps me tremendously. Just to journal it, to write it down, to think about it, to pray about it. Bring it to God in my quiet time in the morning before work. And, and a lot of times, it makes my day a lot better. I've been in recovery for a few years now, and my crews at work, they're like, you always look mad. You look happy now, or you're smiling, or what's up with you? And so it gives me a chance to share God too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it should be, I mean, honestly, and I think we've said this a few times, even during this month specifically, but recovery does not have to be for the things that we're used to hearing it's for.
Right.
It's really just life dealing with life, dealing with how our life has shaped us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the beauty of it is that, like, the Lord didn't make a mistake along the way. You have a unique story. When I was reading your story, I was telling you how relatable your story was for me. My husband was also in the Navy, and we did, we did so many of the things and experienced so much of what you guys experienced that when I was reading, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It feels like I'm reading portions of our story.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I've listened to testimonies. I mean, it's funny when you go to recovery or celebrate recovery, you're like, okay, when's this going to be done? I'm going to give it a year, 6 months, I'll get me done. And, we're going in 4 years now, and it's like, okay, we're not done. There's a lot of work. But when people give their testimonies, sometimes it's a woman doing it, sometimes it's a man doing it. And it was like a couple of weeks ago, we saw our first couple do it.
Yeah.
And you can grab bits and pieces of each one of their stories and say, hey, that's what I went through, and this is what they did, and this is what they did. And I could apply that to my life. And I mean, Celebrate Recovery is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it is for everybody that has any kind of hurt
Yeah.
Or even
and we all do. Who's void of hurt, right?
I lucky you if you are.
I highly doubt it. I think Jesus himself was the only one that walked around that probably didn't. I mean, and even he was hurt, but you know, he was perfect. So you know, I think it is important for us to just remind people the importance of, I said it off the top, but I'm just going to say it again. If you've chimed in just more recently, you have to go and show up and keep coming.
Yep.
I love how you said, you know, like, when is this going to be over, right? Because you have this feeling oftentimes that you're like, okay, well, I'm going to give it a year and we're going to see if I get any results after a year. And the reality is that, at any point in time, you could be working on something else. You know, if I were to step back into Celebrate Recovery, I probably would not say, you know, hi, my name is Kim and I'm dealing with codependency and anger and depression, because I really do feel like God has done a lot of healing work in me through those things. It would be something else. And it would be me really kind of searching and prayerfully going, okay, I'll be honest, there are always reasons to grow in our understanding of how God is using our story to shape us and encourage others. And we can always use the help to do an introspective look at who we are.
That's right.
And discover what God really wants to shape us and move us through. In every season of life, he's got a plan. Right?
Well, it's funny. I mean, when I came to Celebrate Recovery, it was for addiction. My name's Chris. I'm a grateful believer, and I struggle with addiction.
Right.
Now I'll get up there and my name's Chris. I struggle with addiction, anger issues, codependency, and life on life's terms.
Right.
You know, and those are things that you deal with, or general insecurities. You know, and people, we need to realize that, you know, there's a family here, and there's a family in our church that just are here to love on you when you're struggling, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Do your sons know about all of it? Yeah?
Yeah, my wife and I, we had written our testimony. She wrote hers, I wrote mine. My oldest son and daughter-in-law and 2 granddaughters live up in Washington, and we gave them one-on-one testimonies. We told them, they sat down and listened to both of our testimonies on a night, and it's good for them to know the mess that we were in so they could see the work that God's done in our lives. And my youngest son lives here, and my other 2 grandkids, and he sees God in action in us, my wife and I, and he knows they were part of that growing up. They were part, and it's interesting when you talk to them, they don't remember the drugs. They don't remember that. They remember the yelling and the screaming. But that's a good thing, because then they didn't have to be tempted with it. But, you know, and they also need to know where it can lead you if you choose to go down that path. So they're both aware of everything my wife and I have done.
Do you feel like it's it's kind of weird? I mean, like, it's a biblical thing, right? That's something that's really difficult, something you probably would wish to not have to share or let people know about, is actually probably one of your biggest strengths as far as sharing your life with the people that you love and with even strangers as well.
I mean, that last time I gave my testimony at Northeast Assembly of God, all day at work, I had the devil just tell me, you're not good enough. No one wants to hear your story. Your story's garbage. And the people that will text you or Facebook you or come up to you after you give and say, man, that hit me here. And that's what I was saying. You can glean on to whatever someone's saying and say, I can relate to that.
Yeah. What kind of encouragement would you give somebody living in denial of their addiction right now?
Living in denial is a tough thing, and that's step one. And you just got to realize that if you think you've got it under control, it could be an addiction, and that right there is denial. So come in. Come to CR and learn about it. We have lessons. We cover the 12 steps, and one of them is denial. So it'll teach you about it. Encourage, though, you've got to go do it. You've got to come and let the process happen. So.
3 things that have made the biggest impact on you in Celebrate Recovery? Or just recovery in general?
Recovery in general. Celebrate Recovery has helped me with my walk with God. Learning biblical principles encourages me. I don't want to miss church on Sunday, let alone miss church on Wednesday with Celebrate Recovery. Come here and I actually hear the message, and knowing that God is always putting people in my path to tell me what He wants to hear. And Celebrate Recovery has done that. And I mean, the pastors we have here speak so passionately, and it's just like and for them to come out and admit the struggles they've dealt with too. And it just makes you feel welcome, and that's one. It's just my walk with God, and the positivity in my life, my marriage. My marriage is better now for the last 4 years than it's been in 32 years. I mean, we've had great times, don't get me wrong, but we had dark times. But with God at the center of our life now, it just
next
it's moving
level.
Mountains, man. Yeah, it is great.
Yeah.
So,
God is so good.
No, God is good all the time.
Well, thanks so much for being so open. I know that, again, this is not always the easiest thing, right? To like share all the things that people work so hard to keep hidden from others, but that you'd be willing to kind of just open it all up for people to see, because you do actually understand the value of like,
it's God's story. It's not
God's
my story.
It's not. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, guys, join us tonight. Celebrate Recovery.
Yep.
Strike while the iron's hot.
5:30 dinner, 6:30 doors open for large
come
service.
Come eat, hang out. Maybe if that's too close to work, come 6:30. I think we even still have Zoom availability.
We do have Zoom available. We have Zoom leaders. Just if you want the link, crnorthpoint.org.
Yep.
And they will send you the link to the Zoom.
Yeah. You'll see it right on that page. In the details, you're going to see the link to our website, and on that website for CR, you'll see a link that says, "Hey, I want the Zoom the Zoom information."
And it's great worship too. I mean, we have great worship, live music every Wednesday during the large group, and the small groups are the meat and potatoes. Man, you get to know people. Share your stories. You don't even have to share your story. You can just sit there and listen.
You can just sit and listen. And that can make a huge impact. I'm telling you. You could walk away tonight already feeling a little different, like, oh, wow.
I did my first night. Remember, we all
everybody did the first night. Yep. Yes. So the good news is you already know Chris, if you're walking in. So there you go. And then, again, we just want to encourage you. Don't let Satan take this away from you. Recovery is literally just a few hours away. You can come. You can build a community. You can join in online with Zoom. God has got a plan for you, and we know that. And so don't let Satan take this away. Right. Step in. And just trust that God's going to do something big in your life.
That's right.
Like you did with Chris.
That's right.
And so many others that are in Celebrate Recovery. So be sure to check it out tonight, 6:30 or 5:30 for food.
5:30 for food.
5:30 for food. All right, guys, go and make it a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Sunday. Have a good one.
Thank you.